What are the three biggest challenges almost every single business will face at some time? Time, team, or money? My name's Neil Martin. I'm one of the senior business coaches at Action Coach Cheltenham. And in a series of 3 videos, I'm going to be talking about each of those issues. And today, we're going to be starting with time. So let me start by asking you a few questions. How many hours do you typically spend working in your business in an average week? How many hours would you like to spend? And if you could free up some time, what would you do with it? And I should stress here, I'm talking about working in the business, not so much the time you spend working on the business. How many hours do you spend in the business doing the job day to day? And how many hours do you spend on strategic things, looking at the direction of the business and where you are trying to take it in the future? And then how many hours does that leave you for other things in your life? For time with family, for hobbies, for outside interests? And if you could free up a bit more time, what would you do with it? I think that's probably the big question. What would you do with some extra time if it was available to you? Stephen R. Covey said, "The key is in not spending time, but in investing it." So how do you invest your time right now? In fact, let me refer to another quote, which is from Lee Iacocca, who was instrumental in turning around the Chrysler Motor Corporation back in the days. And he said, if you're a business person and you can't be home by 6 o'clock for dinner with your family, you are doing something wrong. So how do you invest your time? Where do you spend your time? And that probably should lead me on to talking about time management. And a lot of people talk about time management. There are loads and loads of books been written about time management. But I'm going to break a little illusion here and just say that time management itself is a fallacy. So you can't manage time. Time continues regardless of what you do or don't do. What you can do is manage how you use that time. Typically most of us have a 40-hour work week. So how do we make that week as effective as possible? And by the way, if you're working a lot more than that, it's about making sure that you don't have to work more than you need to, that you've got the right infrastructure, resources, and more than anything, the right decisions in place to actually give yourself a life back. Because let's face it, that's why we start businesses in the first place. It's for the life that it should give us, not so that we can spend all of our time working. So instead of trying to master time, what we can do instead is focus on trying to master ourselves, trying to master our use of time, how we focus our efforts and our energies. And as a business owner or business leader, I'm sure you've got all kinds of goals in place for things like revenue, for your turnover, for your profits, and various other key performance indicators in place too. But here's the question. Do you have time goals? Do you have goals in place for how you will focus and manage your time? Do you have goals for how many minutes or hours you spend in a week on certain activities? How focused are you in terms of how you actually use your time to make it as productive as possible? And if you're watching this and you're thinking, I don't have that right now, or even I do have that right now, but it doesn't work as well for me as I think it should, one thing I want to suggest you do is to conduct a time audit. And when I talk about a time audit, what I'm really saying is monitoring your time in 15 to 30 minute segments. So thinking about your typical day and where do you spend your time? And here's one of the interesting things. Just doing that exercise of auditing your time will almost certainly make you more productive. Because if you think about it, if you're going to stop and make regular notes of what did I do for the last half an hour, or what did I do for the last 15 minutes, if you've been wasting that time scrolling through social media or staring out the window thinking about things that aren't really that productive, or running from one place to another, talking by the photocopier, those kinds of things, you're going to notice it, right? And you're going to go, hang on, I could get 15 minutes back here. I could get 10 minutes back here. I could get half an hour back here. And maybe I could focus that time on some more business critical things. But one of the things that happens to a lot of us, a lot of people, is that we get caught up in doing reactive things when we should be focused on proactive things. Or to put it another way, we sometimes get caught up in what's urgent instead of what's important. See, here's the big question. What are the needle movers for you in your business? What are the critical things that have to happen? Do you start each day by going, okay, these are my must achieve actions for today? the things that are business critical, the things that will make the biggest difference for me. And in fact, do you know that in advance? Can you plan out your week to say, these are going to be my key activities? Now, I know, there will always be some urgent things that come up that we haven't planned for. That's the nature of life, right? The only real constant is change itself. So there will always be things that can come along and trip us up. But we can plan for that too. We can plan some time in for contingency. A bit like if you were building a house. If you're building a house, and if you've ever watched any kind of like DIY program on TV, you'll know that they always or almost always go over budget. And the big thing is how big is their contingency budget, and do they actually manage to stick to that contingency budget more than the actual budget they set? It's the same thing with time. Do you build in contingency in your day? Do you build in contingency in your time to make sure that you've got time to deal with the key things that really have to get done? And one concept to look at in this is something that we refer to as a default diary. Now, what does a default diary mean? A default diary is where you start to think about, well, what are my highest priority tasks? What are the things that absolutely have to happen? And are they on my diary for the week? In fact, are they on my diary for every week? If I was to look at my planner or to look at your planner, can I see in that planner, these are the key things that have to get done? These are the times that are scheduled. They might not give the exact detail of, for example, who you're going to call if sales calls is one of those activities, or who you're going to meet with if team meetings are one of those key activities, or which process or procedure you're trying to improve if that's one of your key activities. But what they will do is show the time slots that you've allocated for certain activities in the business around finance, around marketing, around sales, around operations. What are the income generating tasks? What are the things that are going to help you to grow and scale that business? And are they on your calendar? Are they on your calendar? Because if they're not on your calendar already, guess what? Something urgent is going to come up and it's going to bump them out of the way. And it's really key that we get this default diary in place so that we can use that to prioritize our time. It's not about scheduling everything that comes along. It's about scheduling the priorities, right? It's about actually getting something clear that says these are the things that absolutely have to happen. And once you get it right for yourself, we can then move on to talk about team productivity. And one of the other sessions that I'm going to be doing for you here is around team. So we'll probably talk about that a little bit more there. So make sure you don't miss that video. But I just want to mention at this point, how can you lead a team if you're not leading yourself? If you are the leader of a team, you are the example. If your diary isn't organized and planned, and you don't do the important things, and you keep being distracted by the urgent, what example does that set for your team? So it's important that you get these disciplines for yourself first, so that you can be that example and set that example for everybody else. Now, just as we start to wrap this video up, I want to give you one more really important tip that ties in with the idea of a default diary. And that is a concept that I like to refer to as starting your day the night before. Now, what do I mean by starting your day the night before? Well, what I mean is at the end of each day, take a few moments before you leave your office, before you leave your place of work, to just sit and reflect and look at your day for tomorrow. And actually look at your diary for tomorrow and what's in there. And when are you doing the key tasks? And do you have the things that you need to have prepared in advance ready before you leave? Because guess what? When you do that, it makes it much easier to switch off when you get home. Whatever you're doing in your life in any given moment, it's about being present for that thing. So being present in the workplace when you're working, but being present for your family when you're at home. We live in a world that's full of distractions. We can all grab our mobile phones at any moment. And by looking at those mobile phones, we can be somewhere else. You can be sat with your family, but you can be working discreetly in the corner with no one noticing. But that's not how best to plan your time. That's not how to get the most productive results. The way to get the best results is to be focused on one thing at a time. And by starting the day the night before, you get that clarity of what you're going to do tomorrow that makes it easy for you to switch off, but also means that you arrive in your office or your workplace ready to go. So I think it's absolutely critical that we do that. And also on a Friday, start your week the Friday before. Or the last working day of the week. Start your week on that day so that you know what you're coming into the following week. Now, talking about starting things in advance, what happens when a lot of people attend a session like this? I can tell you, nothing. Nothing. Doesn't matter how many light bulbs have gone off. A lot of people don't actually take action. They'll watch this video. They go, do you know what? There's some good questions in there. There's some things for me to think about, but they don't act on it. So I encourage you, if a light bulb has gone on for you, if something has happened and you've gone, yep, do you know what, Neil, you've made me think about something. I encourage you to take action right now. And it might be as simple as pulling your diary out and looking at it and going, how many of the things that are in there right now are the things that really matter to my business and the things that will move the needle? It might be making a list of what those priorities are and making sure that you're then scheduling them. Whatever it is, make sure that you are taking some action from this video so that you get your results as you move forward. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Make sure you check out all the other videos in this 3-part series and also the video from my colleague Anne Wall talking about marketing. Thank you for tuning into this video, and I will see you on the next video in this series.